topic 1. Bill Gates and his foundation inserted themselves in the international COVID response. But should billionaires ever be considered experts for anything? Should their opinion matter any more than the average person's? Should we ask their opinions on the tax code, transportation policy? Should we even specifically care about their opinions on their own fields, rather than anyone else who has worked in them? So yeah, a lot of this is aimed at Bill Gates, but it's not the only one, right? So you see all the time, you see billionaires being interviewed, right? They're on TV, on the news stations, they're at conferences, right? What do you think about this thing? And people hang on their words as if these people have any idea what the fuck they're talking about, have any fucking clue what the fuck they're talking about, right? So I'm wondering, should their opinions matter, literally at all, more than any other average person? So we're going on, get your opinions. I'm gonna take myself off the screen, and you guys can hammer it out, but you will hear my commands, you will obey my commands. We'll go from there.
Ooh, I feel like you
I
could
can't
breathe
see
again.
no evil. I can't hear no evil.
All right, we'll start with Problematic Pan. Introduction.
Yeah, as the biggest capitalist here, I think not only should we defer to billionaires, we should subject ourselves to their every will. But to be serious, I do think that their authority comes not from the fact that they have billions of dollars, but that they have access to some of the best minds available. If I want to contact some, lead physicist like Sean Carroll, there's no chance for me. If Bill Gates wants to, he can just ring him up on the phone and he's there. So the reason that I think billionaires are interesting and we might want to consider what they have to say isn't solely from the fact that they made a lot of money. It's from the fact that they have access to all of the biggest intellectual minds, in the country, basically at the tip of their fingers. And I think for that very reason, we should consider them. I mean, for example, we say Bill Gates stepped into the coronavirus pandemic. Well, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation did, which has many scientists, has a bunch of personnel. So I do think that to an extent, they are worth listening to, especially if they have large organizations with access to many intellectual figures. I don't think their individual opinion matters more than anyone else's, but I do think that talking to them can get you access and stuff to some very valuable opinions.
I won't rise.
I think that it's exceptionally problematic to assign the descriptor that they have the best minds available. There's absolutely no indication that they have the best minds. They have the most expensive minds, and they have the most nepotistic minds, and they have the most connected minds, but they don't necessarily have the best minds. And so that's one of the biggest problems is that assigning these people any inherent value because they have a bunch of actual money and therefore power in our society is tremendously problematic. We haven't necessarily seen that Bill Gates has been effective at doing any of the things that he's being involved in right now. It's totally arguable whether his long-term influence or role in worldwide pandemic, or fighting malaria has been kind of on the fence. There's not really conclusive evidence that he's helped. Same with his involvement in the project to fight AIDS, and we know that there's been some definite negative side effects of his involvement in the COVID 19 vaccine debate. And these people have been doing this for hundreds of years. There's just been rich people that have these, quote unquote, great ideas. We're forced to listen to them because they have the most influence. And we have lost our democracy in a lot of ways. And I think that it's hugely problematic that we're allowing it to continue.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I'm good with it. You should still treat their opinion everybody's got, what is it? Assholes are opinions. Everybody's got one and they all stink. I think you should still evaluate it and not just take it oh, this guy's made a shitload of money. That means that everything he said is golden. As a matter of fact, I think some of the simps for God damn it, who is it? The guy who looks like the bad guy from Fifth Element. Fucking Tesla motherfucker.
The African American richest man in the world.
No, yeah, the black guy. So all right, so memes aside, no, but at the same time, what they can be counted for is some level of experience of creating and basically running successful institutions. But our judgment should continue, and their opinion shouldn't be valued uncritically. So that's kind of where I land on it, where I do think that the demonization of powerful people who run institutions is a little weird. But besides that, like, take it with a grain of salt. But yes, they should be valued, and I'll wrap it up there.
Okay. New? Awesome.
Yeah, I 100% agree more or less with problematic panic as well as counterpoints, where billionaires, it's like we can't instantly, you have a lot of money, just throw away your opinion because you might be corrupt or whatever. We have to be careful with that because, like as they were saying, they do have access to a lot of different people and a lot of different information, and as well as if they're sitting at the head of some of these foundations, no, they won't necessarily know how, like, why exactly 2 + 2 = 4, but they're just regurgitating a lot of the information that their scientists or whoever they have underneath them, right, is giving to them, right, and they're spouting it out like that, right. Now take it where in the same I would say I would take the words coming out of their mouth about like very complex issues in the same way I would about any streamer that I trust where they get their insight, right? Where it is information being relayed from an actual source, right? Going through them, I'm going to know it's going through them. So it could be wrong, it may not be perfect, and then it's coming out, right? It's not like these actual opinions. Now, if Elon Musk starts creating individual opinions about the way batteries should be, or like some, or like, something crazy like climate change that he's not in, right? Obviously you toss that out. You toss that out with everybody. I would toss it out if a doctor said it or anybody else who wasn't their field, right? But if a billionaire who happens to be in this field is making an opinion on a field that they've been in, listen to them a little bit, right? It's not crazy for them to know what they think about, right? Outside of that, they have no opinions outside. Like, who cares, right?
Yeah.
Tax policy, I that's one thing I don't. Who cares?
Fanatic.
I think I kind of agree with some of the things that have been said. Overall, like, yeah, I don't think that it makes sense to put a whole bunch of stock in like what they are just because they're billionaires. But I would say the fact that they're billionaires is somewhat indicative of their ability to like obviously thrive and have some sort of connectedness. And while I wouldn't necessarily value their words, I think there is a reason why we like seek to billionaires because capitalism, which is an amazing system, is so interesting to into this society and it seems like they're the best at it, right? Like quantifiably. So then it makes sense that, like, I guess in times of uncertainty, when capitalism runs the country, that the billionaires would be the ones that would probably have the insight on what else we need to be doing. Bill Gates, I mean, like the idea that he hasn't done a lot like around the world is just like absurd, right? Like, as far as like just vaccinations are concerned, as far as like just quality of life improvements and things that he's done in Africa, and just around the world. I don't know, like to downplay like his like what who he is absolutely absurd. Now Elon Musk, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. And same with Jeff Bezos. Like, I mean, maybe he's probably doing a lot of good in world too. We just don't see it because of the numbers. I know he's doing a lot of terrible in the country just with the way he runs his company. But it's a whole other conversation.
You, Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, on the specific topic about Bill Gates being involved in COVID, he absolutely did insert himself. It's not just that his foundation has been involved in like giving out vaccines or being polite or anything like that. He and his foundation has opposed lifting the protections for the patent of the vaccine. Um, in opposition to what I believe the World Trade Organization, the WTO made an agreement that allowed it's called TRIPS, trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. It was a waiver that would allow member nations to stop enforcing a set of COVID related patents during the pandemic so that low and middle income countries can produce and import generic versions of the vaccine. Gates opposed that. And then now you see a ton of people, ton of different groups are very upset with him. I had the quotes pulled up, but my window is so small that it's kind of hard to find it all, but take my word for it there. We can see the real world effects of it. Most of Africa did not reach the 10% goal of vaccinating their people. I don't know if it was first vaccination or full vaccination, but most countries did not reach that 10%. And overall, the entire continent, I believe, got just 4% of Africa's population is fully vaccinated. So I think COVID is an excellent example of what happens when we give too much credit to billionaires. Now, Bill Gates is probably an expert on fucking computers, not fucking COVID. You know, I'll take his advice when it comes to building like the new technology, but maybe not with a global health pandemic. And when it comes to things like the tax code, obviously billionaires are probably have a bit of a bias there of what they might want the tax code to be, and the majority of people have a very different opinion. I would give more credit to the majority of people because, frankly, I agree with them more. When it comes to things like transportation, rich people don't even need public transport, so maybe they wouldn't really prioritize it if they had their way of building our cities. So maybe don't listen to them on that issue either. The people we should be listening to should be qualified people, experts in the field. That's my opinion on that.
Tiberius.
Yeah, so let's just make this really simple. Take Connor's and Fanatics statements, copy paste those because I'm 100% with those. And then the only thing I'll add, because it's the only thing that I have left, is that if they're rich and they have an opinion, generally in overall, if they're first generation, that they earn their income into that, they're usually pretty competent. They're usually pretty smart folks. Doesn't mean you should listen to them on everything. If they're a kid, they're second gen, they're morons. Don't ever listen to them on anything. And I'll actually end with that.
Jason.
Yeah, I think that there you definitely can heed some useful advice from people who have acquired, a mass of money through their work. I think that it has to cater to what it is that their expertise is. And I'd say that oftentimes what you find, like with Bill Gates, he's probably less hands-on with technology now than he was previously. So, even in looking at somebody like Gates, for example, like I'd say, well, there's got to be people who are newer to the field, who are working on more advanced technologies, who have their hands in it a little bit more. So maybe I would tend to lean towards those folks as opposed to Gates. Doesn't mean I don't think he can provide some insight. Sure, that's great. As far as like insight into tax policy and things like that, I 100% think anybody running a major corporation should keep their hands completely away from that. I don't think we should heed their warnings or their advice or anything on that. I personally don't think that anything that, essentially you could look at with like a politician and say that could be a conflict of interest. I'm going to treat a billionaire the same way. If I feel like there's a vested interest for them to gain something out of it, monetarily especially, I'm probably not going to be too keen on listening to them. And I'm going to want to hear some other voices in there. Doesn't mean that they can't say something, get something out there, but I don't think that they should be valued necessarily over other experts in the field, just as educated, or if not more so than they are, or that because they have this money, they somehow get a pass to, be above reproach as far as their views go. So I think there is a place where you can listen, you can understand, but you got to take the good with the bad. Some of it's going to be dog shit, some of it's going to be really good, and you have to be discerning with that. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Okay, finally Wiggle.
I think ideally, you wouldn't want billionaires. You would want one trillionaire. You'd want the United States government. And but unfortunately, we're here where we are, and this is a failure. And then we have these groups of individuals that that are billionaires, and they're never gonna spend all their money. They're just sitting on this money. Like where have we come from? Where we have these individuals that are sitting on this money that they're not utilizing. And then we have to hope that they invest it correctly. We have to hope that they do the right thing with their money. And then we can look towards like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. We look through like a group of like 5 or 6 and we say, look, they're doing something with their money. And then we ignore the people that maybe Tiberius mentioned, like their children, etc. It's kind of irritating there. But then to say that these individuals don't have some form of value, I think a little differently there. I say like if we took everybody on this panel and we gave you like a couple billion dollars, the one thing you'd be really good at is being efficient, because you'd have so much money that you'd be able to think about time management completely differently. You could do anything you wanted. Now the constraint is your time. That's what you're limited by. So these people are really efficient when it comes to specifically managing their time. I think they get overpaid for that, but management and stuff like that. But then again, like to discount that is kind of weird. I think we have a lot that we could learn from these individuals, but I wouldn't overstate it. And then beyond that, to say that the average person is just as knowledgeable as like a billionaire, that's laughable. That's laughable. That's just like some AOC type of talking point. The average person is not as smart as the average. What did Tiberius say? Like the first person to come into $1 billion in this the first generation of billionaires. No, they're smarter than the average person. But it's about by how much. And another thing I thought was interesting, it was stated on the panel earlier, something about like Jeff Bezos, what you feel about him. I thought about that, and it was kind of interesting. I think it was Fanatic that said, I was like, you know what? As a consumer, I love like what Jeff Bezos has done, but then as a human being, I feel like, damn, like this is pretty bad. And then we have to ask ourselves, like, where's this trend going? Where like as consumers we're happy, but then as human beings we might be less happy with the situations around. And there's this competition between these two forces, and it feels like the consumer in you is always going to win. That's it.
Listen, I don't think that like first generation billionaires is really like it's there's so very few of them. Whenever I hear about first
Yeah.
generation billionaires and people, it's only black people, right? Like Bill
Yep.
Gates's parents, like his dad was like a lawyer to the Rockefellers, and his mom was like super duper loaded. Like he was already like in the top 1% already, like as a kid, and going to school with like the Rockefellers. So it's like it's kind of crazy to me, right? Jeff Bezos and his mom, like his parents donating all that money to help his failing business at one point. Just Donald Trump and his small loan of $1 million. I mean, and then obviously you got Elon Musk and his dad's diamond mines in Africa, right? Like these people aren't first generation people. They were just extremely connected, really loaded people with enough enough narcissism to like propel them to the absolute top of being like CEOs. Like they're probably psychopaths. I think when you can like have
Yeah.
the Flint Michigan water situation happening, and Bill Gates, being the great humanitarian he is, doesn't do anything about that, right? Like, and it's just like so that guy created that freaking machine, and it was it was like a some sort of dehumidifier, and it was like extracting water from the air at no cost. And it's like anyone can have this, and then like some cretins went and broke that machine. Bill Gates didn't step up to fix that. It would have cost him like literally less than like 0.00001% of his like freaking money. And the guy's like, yeah, I could do it again. I just need like 200,000. I made this. I did this myself, like with my own money. And it's like, yeah, when Akon is doing more for Africa as far as like providing electricity, like and than Bill Gates, I'm not going to look at him as some sort of humanitarian like saint at all, right? And these people are not like necessarily first generation billionaires. And even if they are first generation billionaires, which I don't even know that they are, they're not first generation wealth for sure.
Well, there's a big difference between
just
first
quickly,
generation.
just quickly, we do have a hype train going on. You guys want to hop out? Subs to the channel, gift bits or gift subs to help out that hype train. But thank you for the guys guys and gals who gifted so far. Okay, Pan.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there is a difference between being born into wealth and being born a billionaire. I do think that even if your parents are relatively rich, like admittedly Bezos' parents, Gates' parents were, being able to transform that into billions of dollars is not a small feat. There's a lot of people who are born into wealth, not very few of them become billionaires. Also, when it comes to like Bill Gates, you can question his motives and stuff, but I don't think he's doing this for the profit. He's donated billions of dollars for this. He's not making money from this. He was warning about the potential for a disease outbreak since like 2015. It's something that he's kind of been focused on since he's done his philanthropy, is diseases and infectious diseases and spreading and shit. So the idea that he's just like out here maliciously to patent all the drugs and make a bunch of money, I think is a little bit ridiculous.
Who
Because
said that?
Well,
Who said
no,
that?
some
Who said that?
people,
Nobody
Did
said that.
Nathan hear
This is
that?
I
really
swear if
ridiculous.
this ends up being Twitter.
I brought up.
Nathan
Swear.
brought it up.
Okay,
I
good.
brought up the fact that
He
that
absolutely is
I
making
don't know
money.
I don't know what his motivations might be. I can't read into his mind, but I know that he has put his foundation up in front of everybody to say, "Don't worry, guys, we'll vaccinate people." They clearly have not vaccinated enough people in the developing world. And let me read you a quote right here. There was a quote here that says, "No barriers should stand in the way of equitable access to the vaccines, including intellectual property," which is why we are supportive of a narrow waiver during this pandemic. This was written now by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation CEO because they are now reversing course on their position. Even they recognize what they were doing was wrong and they have to change it. But yeah, I would say not allowing generic drugs and wanting to protect patents during a global pandemic is a little silly.
I mean, doesn't that show though they were willing to reverse course? Like, it's not like they stopped
After-
doing work. They
after-
was like, oh, no patent rights. Yeah, I'm not saying that they
after-
never said that, right?
Yeah,
Obviously,
after months of failing, after months of people dying, and as a new variant is now taking place. So, I mean, sure, they're changing course now. Good job, I guess. Clap. But it shows that like they were wrong, and maybe we shouldn't just trust them just because they're billionaires.
I mean, I'm not
That's all
saying
I'm
just trust them because they're billionaires, but I don't think that there's these self-motivated people here. They're donating a bunch of their money.
Yeah,
Like,
but like he was bragging about how
percentage?
he
Wait,
convinced-
what? Do you believe it's altruism? Like, do you not believe that there's
I
self-motivation
don't believe
in them
really in
giving money?
altruism. I think it's most likely because once you're as rich as Bill Gates, all you have left to do is try to build your legacy, and
So
generally that's
why
done
do you
via
think it's all
humanitarian
that they have
aids.
left?
Well, because they don't really have many material needs, right? I mean, if you think Maslow's like hierarchy, he's all the way up to like self-actualization. He wants to build a legacy, like be remembered,
So
right? I'm not saying
that's
that
what
like
he wants,
he's doing
but
this because
isn't
he's
that-
just a nice guy.
Isn't that selfish motivation?
Yeah,
That
sure, but
leads
I
to
don't.
good
I think
acts?
all motivation is selfish.
That's
A
not
lot
an
of this- a lot of
indictment
this-
of altruism or perceived altruism.
Yeah, exactly.
If
I mean-
somebody does something good, but because they do it for their own ego, they still did something good.
I know that's the point, but to
Well,
say
a lot
that
of
they
this
didn't do it for
philanthropy
themselves is very different.
isn't just the goodness out of their heart, and that's correct. And the other thing is there's also tyranny in some of this philanthropy. They're doing it because they want a foothold in certain countries. They're doing it because there's an advantage for them. There's a tax advantage. There are tons of advantages for them to commit philanthropic acts. Like, let's not act like they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart.
And-
They're not.
and it's
And may I
also
add-
We've seen multiple motivations at one
Philanthropies
time.
aren't actually doing shit. Like, they're
so you
pushing a
think
lot of
their
money up to
motivation is just a tax
admin
write-off?
costs and shit like that,
may-
and not much is getting to the people. So, like, there's that too. You know, come on.
May I add, because someone's pointing this out in the chat, and it's very interesting. Nathan finds such ways to blame billionaires for COVID. No, it's not me blaming them. I mean, here's a statement from the co-founder of the Initiative of Medicine, Access, and Knowledge. They say COVAX is failing. That's Bill Gates' little plan there. And they say at the beginning of the pandemic, it felt delusional, but at this point, it feels that way. She was saying that it's very likely that the devastating second wave in India could have been avoided had IP protections been waived much earlier on. So look, this isn't just my opinions. This is the opinions of a lot of experts, the World Trade Organization. All I'm saying is, like, just because people are rich doesn't mean we need to like.
This
be
would be
their,
like
like,
more
fucking
than
wife
just
or
like
some shit.
on the process. Like I think wasn't the discussion like this, they talked about this like months ago. I feel like it was like 6 months ago or something. They were like these companies have their own machines that also have IP on the machines, and they have IP on every specific part of the process. So it's like you'd have to waive all that IP, and if you didn't, like, it wouldn't inherently solve the problem you have in the moment. And the idea that this is like time sensitive, there's these lives every single day, there's other things that you could divert your attention to. Something about like these facilities and these companies are the best equipped to utilize these resources right now, and perhaps in future it'd be different. I think it was like more complicated than just like waiving the IPs
Waive
is the
IP,
best thing,
yeah.
and then etc.
No, I mean
Yeah.
the earlier discussions. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll just say this real quick. I'm sorry. I've been away for so long. It's hard to not talk. But but I remember the discussion about this from like a few months ago. I think a lot of the motivation on the anti-waiving the patents or getting rid of the patents, they were like saying like, this is serious. We don't want to waste time on this. These countries, they can't produce it. They don't have
Yes.
factories. They don't have this. Well, now they've had like a year to set these factories up to import whatever materials or tools or whatever they need, but they haven't been able to in some cases. But now, with all the pressure, international pressure, the Gates Foundation's facing, among other.
Yo, is somebody
like,
watching cat videos or some shit? What the fuck?
What?
videos?
What?
Never
it's
mind.
in-
Maybe
it's
it's
in
on
your
my
screen.
side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Thanks.
we had the time sensitivity arguments like out of the window now because it's been months and these developing countries are still being screwed.
Well, is it? Didn't they retract the patents or whatever that's needed now? Isn't that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Is
but
that
the
already
point
case?
being that it was time sensitive, so it would have fucked over people. That's what he's saying. So
Right,
there's
no,
people who are
it's
dead
not-
now. If everybody was altruistic, that it would, you know. It
No,
would've-
right, but
there's-
it went. I think it went to like Wigley's argument, where like some of these countries did not have the facilities to do it, right? And I guess maybe they weren't building up, right? Were they building up during this time to have the facilities now? And they're like, all right, now everybody's able to make this, so I'm gonna remove
Well,
the
no.
patent.
Why would you?
Was
Why
that the
would you?
case? Or right,
Why would
right.
you even build up if you didn't? You know that you don't have access
No,
to
you're
the
you're
patents.
absolutely
It
correct.
sounds like
Yeah.
what really happened. What it seems like. I think the evidence points towards the idea that what these guys were doing is they felt like the vaccines and like heavy vaccination might be the end of the pandemic. And if that's the case, then if they're the only people with the vaccine, then they make all the money from it, and it's great. Like, so they get their their money and they get their power and so on and so forth, and they control everything. But obviously, we've now recognized that like the vaccine isn't lasting as long as we thought it would, and so now there's going to be these needs for boosters and updates and things like that. And so now it's like, okay, guess we didn't solve the problem, and now we got a bigger problem on our hands. So it's probably in our best interest to go ahead and do things differently. That's what it sounds like.
To quickly answer Nuance's point, there was capacity all over the world from different other nations to produce the vaccines. It just didn't have access to the IPs. But they had the ability to do that.
So then that kind of begs the question, right? Like, so a lot of this stuff was done by the government saying that, like, hey, we'll pay billions of dollars for people once they manufacture it. That started kind of the arms race. The companies manufactured the vaccines as quickly as possible, and then as a result, so I guess the question is like, was that enough money to incentivize people to go? If the IP got waived, like, were we giving them enough of billions of dollars in order to incentivize the R&D over the 2 to 3 years? And then on top of that, like, so this is the real thing. The only thing that I've really objected to so far is it seems like we were trying to imply that, like, self-interest, like irrational or rational self-interest, is the only motivating factor, and there can't be altruism. Well, maybe I'm just like a little bit black-pilled on the nature of humanity, but I think that when you're being altruistic, there's probably a certain level of self-service to that.
Yeah,
You can't just say, oh, it's just self-service, therefore fuck these people. It's probably always been a combination of self-service and basically altruism.
The problem,
Self-service isn't bad. The idea that you want to have a legacy and the way you're going to do that is by helping others. I mean, like, okay, good, right?
well, self-service is bad. Self-service is bad in these cases because, like, this would be something that the government is taking care of. It should be democratic for one thing, and like the most egregious example that Bill Gates being a bastard in this deal was that, like, Oxford University had promised to donate or make all of their research open source. They made a commitment to do that, and then he donated $750 million to their organization, to their R&D, and their pharmacological college or whatever, and then use that to leverage them to decide to keep it the IP private. And I don't forget which company they gave it to, Moderna maybe, or one of them, but regardless, they had intended to make it open source, and he paid $750 million to convince them not to. And there's got to be a reason for that. He's not just going to throw $750 million away.
Well, just to be fair, his stated reason, you guys can take that for what it's worth. He said that the reason was because there was already a lot of vaccine hesitancy, and that there were a lot of people who were just kind of anti-vax, and that there was a fear that there was something that specifically when it came to these brand new vaccines, that it required such specificity that if some of these other people, facilities that didn't have all of the specificity required were to produce vaccines, and there was any fallout whatsoever for it, then that would probably create some really some strong.
Oh, I could see that 100%. Yeah.
And you're right. So we can all agree that that's a realistic thing. Now, I don't know how much stock we're going to put in that, if that's truly what his reasoning was or whatever, but that was what he stated. And
yeah,
I think there is some reasonableness to that.
Yeah, could you imagine if somebody manufactured it? Yeah, could you imagine if somebody fucked up? We already have pericarditis and myocarditis or whatever killing people as is with the quote unquote good vaccines. And the vaccine is way better than fucking COVID, so I'm not trying to spread COVID vaccine hesitancy. But we're already seeing that. So you could imagine somebody else fucking it up even harder and then killing even more people, and then that drives people to not getting the vaccine. So I'm open to either thing, that Bill Gates is a adrenochrome sipping evil maniacal James Bond billionaire. And I'm also open to he took a utilitarian calculus of saying hey, if we keep this in-house, less people will manufacture it, but there's also less of a chance of people fucking it up and then that making worse problems. I'm open to both realities.
I think that this would be indicative of it seems kind of Americentric, right? Because it's America has the country with all these people who are I'm not going to take the vaccine, I'm an anti-vaxxer, and Bill Gates is an American, and then he's paying to have this information not open source, as Revolt was saying. That seems pretty Americentric. So the whole world is condemned to this because of America. And it's to take that from an American viewpoint and say well, yeah, it does help, Americans, and it makes American anti-vaxxers feel a little safer, America a little safer, is kind of discounting the rest of the world during a pandemic.
I want
Well,
to
the rest of
piggyback
the world
off of.
could research it on their own, can't they?
America, because we've seen like in Australia where there's like crazy stuff happening over there because of some of their anti-vaxxers, and there is a growing movement of even anti-vaxxers, though it's not really as prevalent as in the United States, in the United Kingdom, and other European countries as well. So this isn't like something that's just only here, right? And I think even still, even if that was his goal, even if it was American centric, I mean, we are one of the larger countries in the world, right? We have a population of 330 million people. We are one of the largest economies in the world. Like a lot of what we say does still influence the rest of the country. I would say, I mean, the rest of the world. I think we are pretty much a laughing stock because of the Republican Party and the way that they address COVID stuff. But that's a whole nother conversation. So yeah, I understand the reasoning behind it.
Let's go to
But
Tiberius.
who said?
Let's let Tiberius in.
I already lost my train of thought.
Really? Come on,
Well,
dude.
yeah.
So who said these other countries can't do research on their own? That like I don't think there's any prohibitions. They just want to
Well,
piggyback off of the R&D that American companies already did.
They can't,
But
but
the reason-
American companies
Well,
like get
that's exactly
subsidies
the
for all
thing,
their
American-
research and development. That's the thing. Is like the companies actually probably got, it looks like probably more than what they spent on research and development was subsidized to them. So like you've got like the case of Pfizer, they spent like $2.8 billion. They received over $3 billion in subsidies. They're going to make $26 billion in revenue from the vaccine. Like that's why, you know what I mean? Like, and they've been able to crowd other countries and other companies out of the market.
I would say that's enough, right?
I know you guys know this. I've stated this a billion times that United States is specifically responsible for the vast majority of biotechnical advances. More biotechnical advances come from this country than literally every other country in the world combined. So, like, think about that. When the idea that like these other companies are going to be able to do this is just absolutely absurd. It's the United States, Big Daddy USA.
Yeah, also I looked it up, and there is. I looked it up, and I want to say
all of the vaccine development
moment of
happened with
silence
all
for
the
the
countries
Patriots.
working together. This wasn't just the
Yeah,
U.S.
like
There was
Pfizer's
several
coming from
countries that worked
Germany.
together to develop these vaccines. So that's a farce. I'm sorry.
First
no.
But second of all, more importantly, I just looked it up, and the idea that vaccine hesitancy is uniquely something that's American is
Not uniquely American.
Well, no,
but it's largely
let me finish.
American.
That's actually not true. So in a lot of third world countries, vaccine hesitancy is even higher. If we take a look at a lot of African countries, I just looked up some information on these African countries. They've been turning away vaccines because there's been insufficient demand for the vaccines, that they're worried that vaccines and stuff are going to spoil. So it's true among like developed nations that we have the highest vaccine hesitancy.
Wait. You kind of ran through something really quick there. Like that there's a fear that they would spoil, but like the vaccines have to be kept at an extremely cold temperature, and in those specific climates, it couldn't maybe not last. Maybe there is a problem.
You missed
the problem is they're going to spoil.
It was demand. You missed the demand portion of that.
Yeah, so the demand might be lower in a sense because, like, let's say the people think, hey, they're giving us vaccines that are not working because of the temperature. And so that'd be different reasoning than the United States, where it's like you can get.
Well, they got AC in Africa. I'm just letting you know they got AC and refrigeration.
Yeah, but it's also harder in some of these countries in order to maintain the vaccines at a certain temperature because they have to be extremely cold.
Hey, there's a fair point coming out of that. I mean, I'm looking at a list here. Some of the problems with COVID shots in Africa is that while there are some deliveries in the countries, a lot of them are not prepared. Lack of funding, lack of staff, lack of community outreach to get the vaccines out of there or out to people. So I think the point about COVID hesitancy being much more unique to the United States. I mean, we can only when we look mainly at developing countries. You can see in all these like Western countries, there's huge anti-vax movements, rallies, protests, and all that stuff. The only people to really show up electorally have been in the United States. I mean, when you look at like electoral politics that has happened during this pandemic, you can look at like Canada. The People's Party did shit. You know, they didn't go out. Their whole identity was being like anti-vax this election cycle, and they did it very poorly. So I really don't believe that. I do agree with the idea that the vaccine hesitancy is much more of an American problem. That doesn't mean there's zero people.
Countries, you can't just discount these countries. They matter too. Like earlier, we were talking about, it's just an American thing. Well, we have to remember, a lot of the times, these variants are coming out of very highly unvaccinated populations in third world. That's why we see variants coming out.
Hang on. You guys are missing something very important here, right? Like, and that's the fact that the United States, our sentiments and the sentiments that we carry and the movements that we start here have an influence around the world. Like we have a heavy influence. So if you see an uptick in anti-vaxxers in other countries, it could very well be the fact that they're getting it from us.
But real quick,
Like,
I
you know.
haven't seen like significant proof that there's like a huge amount or a movement of being anti-vax in these other countries when, you know, especially in the developed world, many of these countries just don't have it. That's why we see the low numbers, and I would attribute the low numbers to the fact that they don't have it. But when we look at countries where anti-vax movements are more prevalent outside of the United States, we can see that they do abysmally. They do horribly when it comes to electoral politics. They don't have popular support. It's not, again, the point isn't that there's zero vaccine hesitancy in the developing world. I'm
Yes,
sure you
thank
could
you.
find a couple people, but it's clearly much more of an American problem.
Yes.
But it's, I mean, to be fair, I don't know the electoral politics of South Africa or Zimbabwe or these countries. I'm not that educated. Like, if it's true that this isn't
Thank you
an
for
issue
telling
there,
us that. I agree.
well, what I'm saying is,
But I don't think you have any
I don't think
evidence
you guys
from
were
your
paying
side.
attention. I don't think you guys were paying
Well,
like.
Wait, evidence on our side. Evidence that what in the United States we have like dramatically more
No, but
access
no
to
one's denying
vaccines,
that.
and there's still a unique level of like hesitancy,
Right,
like
but
to the
no one
point
is
at which
denying that,
your
right?
government's telling
Obviously,
you. The
I
government
keep
has
saying-
partnerships with companies like Uber to pay you to go get a vaccine. There's people that are like getting sick
that has
all around
nothing
you.
I get that.
to
I'm not
do
saying
with
America
Dan's
doesn't
point.
have vaccine
Yeah,
hesitancy,
it has a lot
right?
to do with it because do you think
No,
they
it
have
doesn't,
the same
'cause I
access
don't
in certain
disagree.
countries to get a
And
vaccine
let
They
free
me
don't
of
have the
fight.
same
charge?
access, but the fact that they have stockpiles of vaccines going unused because there's no demand for them because no one wants to get vaccinated, that does suggest to me that there's some vaccine hesitancy there. They have the vaccines, they're willing to give them out, but no one wants them. So I would imagine that's vaccine hesitancy.
You know if it's free
maybe
at
they're
the
just
point
so
of
stupid
service?
they don't know how to go to the doctors and get a vaccine shot, but I doubt that's the case.
Yeah, and
No, it's-
wiggle. So,
wait,
so
no,
do
it's
you
the
have?
doctors
Hold
can't
on,
get to them.
Nathan,
Go ahead.
please. Like, if I don't fight, my fucking chat is gonna fall asleep. Okay, so I gotta throw some bones. Okay, so fucking.
I understand what it's like in the right wing.
Yeah, so yeah, you gotta jangle the keys to keep the fucking kids entertained, right? So, anyways, the point being, like, I very much doubt that you have like polling data of like West African or South African nations with like approval rates for fucking vaccines. And what Pan's saying is a perfectly legitimate point, saying that there's probably some level of vaccine hesitancy. And then on top of that, I think weren't we among like eligible adults? Weren't we at like 70% or like 73% or some shit like that? In like all of West Africa and South Africa, are they breaking double digits at this point? So that's kind of my point, is like, you can say that we're just making this shit up, but I don't think you have any fucking evidence to say,
I
oh
never
yeah,
said it's being
everybody
made
in
up.
West Africa and South Africa is ready to fucking go.
I never
They
said
just
that.
don't have the fucking logistics for it. Like,
So,
well,
yeah,
yeah,
the
I would be
conti-
more
the continent
agreeing
of
with-
Africa
Why
is
you jumping
suffering
down
from
Pan's
vaccine
throat?
shortages
I'm jumping
made
down-
worse by a shortfall in deliveries from the global vaccine sharing initiative COVAX. Wealthy countries that pledged to support the initiative have given it only a fraction of the promised doses, and that's probably part of the problem. So, you know, there's that too.
No, that's not the problem.
We
because
are not
they-
giving. We are
they
not even
denied
getting the doses to
They
them.
denied.
They don't
we
have
were
the
offering them
infrastructure
doses
to
of the
deliver
vaccine, and they
those
said
doses.
no. They said no. So the idea that we're not giving them enough doses is obviously incorrect because we were offering them more doses, and they said no. So
Wait,
that's not.
so the
That's
claim
definitely
Yeah,
is that
wouldn't
all-
utilization be
wait.
indicative of something?
The claim that all these countries, especially in Africa, are just refusing the vaccine. They're just refusing.
I'm not saying they're all
No, that's
refusing
not
it.
the
I'm saying
claim.
that
Please
they
don't
have
straw
high-
man. He said
Yeah,
that
can we
they
be
said
nuanced
that-
for a second?
I'm not straw manning, but it just
He didn't
seems
say that.
very-
Okay, if you're not straw man, he didn't say
Yeah.
that. So then, like, address what he
Yeah,
actually said.
well, the reason why I asked that is because it seems like in response to arguments saying that most of these countries probably have low numbers simply because they don't have quite as much access, is then being responded with, well, they're
There
denying
is,
it.
when you say,
but
when
I don't
you say
know if it's
simply because, again, you're reducing and being reductive and strawmanning, because he didn't say this is the only reason. He just said
Yeah.
this is a contributing factor.
Well, that's
He
the
mentioned
reason
that
that
every
he
time.
is
If you
focusing
somehow
on.
missed the nuance that all the rest of us intelligent people caught, then maybe that's your problem. But that's not what he said. Please let the conversation.
I think
Can we
that-
just admit that Americans are
Interesting.
not uniquely stupid? That we're about as stupid
No.
as everybody
No.
else?
No, I do think
that
it's
is
a
the thing
unique
I have
problem
a.
here.
That is the thing that I have a problem with, right?
So
is
your
that I
argument
think-
is that Americans
think-
are uniquely stupid.
With
No,
this,
I
yes.
don't think-
With this,
I
yes.
think
But-
that on this
with-
issue, yeah, exactly. Less
I-
people are getting vaccinated because there's more vaccine hesitancy culture here. Absolutely.
What I would say
Are
is
you
that
sure you're just not exposed to it?
well,
do you mean?
counterpoints. I think
Like
your
you
statement.
exist in, I'm assuming you exist in the U.S., right? It's very clear. It's up in your face. It's really easy to see, like that you in your street that there's people like protesting the vaccine. But since you don't reside in these other countries, speak their other languages, see all this other stuff, as well as know where like
I
the
mean,
nation
when
stands
when
towards
we look
vaccines
at
as a whole.
when we
Like,
look
are
at
you
other
sure?
countries, when we look at like other countries, when we can see vaccine hesitancy in our own government, when we look at other countries, we don't really see it much in government. And then maybe there's like some fringe cases,
Yeah, but
but
he's
other
saying is that
countries
a
are very.
selective? But he's saying is that like a
Mm,
selection bias?
I
That's exactly what he's
What? No,
asking.
no, no,
But
no, no, no,
it's
no.
like
I don't have a bunch of
like
wait. I don't have a bunch of anti-vaxxers that I just see walking down my street all the time, and I'm in a nice liberal area. But my point
Yeah,
I
but
being,
want
have
to
you
help
watched like
you.
wait, wait, wait,
Why
Zimbabwe
do
Let
you
me
have?
help
in
you.
They got
news?
Let me
anti-vaxxers
my
help
and
point
you.
being,
anti-maskers all over
So
the
no, my
place.
point being is when we
Bunch of
look outside
psychos.
the United States, when we can look at elections, in developed countries, we can see that the anti-vax
do
parties
we
do
do that?
horribly.
Do we look
wait,
at elections
hold on.
outside of the United States?
Wait. Can you
Yeah, we
name
can
me a
see that.
country?
Ooh,
Name
yeah,
me a
tell me one.
country. Name me a country that their entire parliament, Congress system, or whatever. They're all in lockstep and boot with the vaccine system. Like that's it.
I'm sure there's
With getting
you
vaccinated.
can probably find me like some
And this
example on
is
this, but we
and this
can
is
see like the
BC in
Russian
Canada?
government, which is
yeah.
a right wing country. We can see in a bunch of these other countries that they are more than willing to fund vaccine research, to have vaccines imported. My point being is that it just seems like a cultural thing that here we have a very unique situation where there's vaccine hesitancy, but when we see elections take place in these countries during the
Mm,
pandemic, you can see that the vaccine hesitant parties do unbelievably bad.
But
I,
wasn't someone's point earlier that uh, Pfizer's profits were like state funded, right? Or like all their research was state funded. I don't see
Yeah,
like
so
they
the
like
United
3
States is
billion.
based because we funded the vaccine.
Right,
You know,
right. So
we're
I'm
so
confused.
awesome.
I'm confused
Right.
of using
Yeah.
Russia as the
So
example as
why
in
are
like
people
the
taking
vaccine
profits for
hesitancy
it?
with the U.S. No. Like I
Because
get
we're
that, but
free
I
and
get
we're
that, but
free
that's
to
not what
be
the argument.
idiots.
Hold on. I'm trying to understand what's going on. Nathan's argument now. There's other things that I
yeah,
said that are controversial. I understand, but I'm talking to Nathan about that argument. So you said Russia, right, is funding their people. It sounds like the U.S. did the exact same thing, despite the vaccine hesitancy, right? Now, I thought at least we're talking about the vaccine hesitancy of the actual population, not necessarily the politicians and whatever that obviously have
yeah.
ulterior motives
That's a
that they have
fair
to
point.
push, right?
That's
Yeah.
absolutely a fair point. And when we look at the populations, I don't see any movement that shows up as much as our movement here in the US for vaccine
Yeah.
So what
hesitancy.
data
I
are you
don't think that
using to
that's
Wait,
corroborate this
Exactly.
statement?
wait.
Are you
I
like
am
are you up
using
on Malian
sure, sure.
politics?
Stop getting
Uh,
Do you
baited.
I'm
watch
Let me speak
using
Malian
for you.
state
we
news?
Please.
can look at the recent
Please.
Canadian election and we can see that the People's Party did worse than they've ever done, as far as I know. Or maybe not, but they got last
Right,
place.
but hold on,
Wait,
Nathan. Are
isn't
you
this
really
their first
reducing?
election?
Again, you're doing this small brain thing where you're like reducing like
I
them
don't think
doing
this is a
bad
small
specific.
brain.
It has to be small brain if you're trying to imply that they're
Really.
only doing bad because of vaccines. If you're not implying that, then it seems like something that's disingenuous to introduce into this conversation, right?
No, the
One or
reason
the
why
other.
I'm
Which one
bringing
is
it
it? You're
up,
Please.
being
the
small brain or you're being
the reason
dishonest.
why I'm bringing it up, is because the People's Party decided during the last Canadian election to heavily focus on the subject of vaccines, and they were being anti-mask, anti-vaccine, and so forth, and it didn't work well electorally. Now we're
Okay, that's
having a
Canada. We were
broader.
talking
That's
about
not the only
Africa.
thing they focused on. It's dishonest as
Wait,
No one's buying that.
I
Forgot it.
love the
we're having a
but.
broader discussion about COVID vaccines worldwide, and we're discussing about
Yeah.
well, actually, this subject is more about billionaires.
There's
So a
actually
lot of this is being brought up, like, hey, Bill Gates, for example, and his foundation has pushed that we protect IPs, and that has prevented things like generic drugs from being created and imported. And because of that, I would argue that's much more of a reason why these third world countries and developing countries don't have high vaccination rates. I've seen no indication or proof of the claim that there's a massive anti-vax movement in
No
any
one
of these
said that.
countries.
Okay,
And
No
I
one
well,
said
just
that.
wait,
I
wait,
actually
I
have the
just
evidence.
read,
No one
I
said that.
just
There
read
you
a
went to
list.
strawman again.
Wait,
No
I
one
just
ever
read a
said
list.
massive.
I
Like, what
just
the
read
fuck
a
are you
list.
talking
I
about?
just read a list explaining that in Africa, some of the biggest problems are one, lack of funds, lack of staff, and lack of outreach. That doesn't mean
Thank
that they're
you.
incompetent. That doesn't mean there's an anti-vax movement, but that just means there's a variety of reasons why their numbers could be low.
Okay, well, I can actually give you some direct evidence because I've been reading this article, right? So, the African director of the World Health Organization has been worried about the vaccine hesitancy. He says there's no doubt the vaccine hesitancy is a factor in the rollout of vaccines. He talks about like the different ways that it's spreading, in this article. I linked it in the group chat, by the way. In India, in a lot of rural areas, vaccine hesitancy surpasses 50%, and health officials have been met with a violent, like people coming to help vaccinate, they've been met with violence. So the idea that there's no widespread movements of vaccines, after reading this, like I just don't think there's any. I don't think you can deny that. Like in India, this is where like the Delta variant came out of, if I remember correctly. So this isn't a non-issue.
My point earlier was not saying that there is zero vaccine hesitancy. I just think out of all the many factors out there, I would much more look at things like the IP and the patent protections, because that's what different trade groups are saying is a major problem, and that's what different health experts are saying is a major problem.
The only thing that I want a concession on is whether or not Americans are uniquely stupid. If I don't get it, it's fine. I'm just saying, like, I doubt it.
We're mid-pack. We're mid-pack.
Here's what I'll say. Here's what I would say to that, Connor. This would be my direct response to that, which is that yes, we are inherently uniquely stupid in this because we have all the data, we have all the science, we have all the information. Everything is right in our face. Everything is approached right here where we can fucking see it every day. By scientists, by science, and yet we are still stupid enough to fucking deny that shit. These other countries where you're saying there's anti-vax sentiments do not have the same resources to get the information out about the vaccine, to counter those anti-vax sentiments. And that's part of the
though.
Oh, like Germany and
saying
France.
That we're more morally capable.
Can you look up like the?
There, right?
I'll do it. It's fine.
In the group chat.
All right. Finally,
I'm gonna go find
Nathan,
a corner. And
you're
stick my nose on it.
insufferable to be on the same side with. Let your friends help you. Here, Penn. The reason why this is different is that you're trying to conflate the reasons why United States citizens are like have vaccine hesitancy towards people in other regions of the world, and that's where we're uniquely stupid. Because here in the United States, our government will not only pay for the whole thing, so you can get it free at the point of service. You can just go and get the vaccine for free. On top of that, they're working with private companies, so you can just get driven there. You have immediate access, depending on where you live, that you can just like get a free ride to go get a vaccine. You can schedule a vaccine as easy as possible. Your access to it is crazy. It's phenomenal. And that's the difference. That's one of the key differences. And because you have that access, that's uniquely different than in certain other countries. In other countries, perhaps going to go get the vaccine could hurt you. It could be economically worse for you. You could have to travel a longer distance, etc.
Wiggle, but that's just one specific example. We see that there are other countries where they have the same exact policies where, like, yes, the vaccine is literally free. Like, there's plenty of countries that have been offering that, and they still have some forms of vaccine hesitancy.
I don't believe that there isn't vaccine hesitancy around the world. I'm saying in America, we uniquely have far more. Vaccine hesitancy.
Okay, so I just looked it up.
Why are we arguing then?
Well, I just looked it up because I have a contestation with this. So I would say that Americans are not uniquely stupid. That I just looked it up. That about 2/3 of the U.S. population is fully vaxxed, and about like 70% have received at least one shot. Considering that we live in like a civil liberal democracy where we value freedom and this, the American way and bald eagles and fucking machine guns and all that bullshit, doesn't that sound about right? Like for me, like I don't think you can be much more like what do you expect except for unless you mandate it by the state where it's like, hey motherfuckers, you're gonna show up to this fucking site and I'm gonna stick you in the fucking arm with this needle. Besides that, isn't 70% one shot and 66% fucking two shots? Isn't that about right for how stupid Americans are?
What counterpoints? What is your argument against getting a vaccine?
I don't have an argument against getting a vaccine.
So exactly. So if it's easily accessible for everybody in America who has the ability to access it, why are there people who don't have it?
Because they're stupid.
Thank you.
They're stupid, but they're stupid and they're free. But this is my point: is that if you had a free society that had the average statistics, like a Pareto distribution of like stupidity, you would probably have similar rates of vaccination. That's my only point. So if I went to the Kingdom of Mali and they instituted like a liberal democracy for like 50 fucking years, and then they had the same policies that we did that respected some level of individual freedom, and then they rolled out the fucking vaccine, I expect the numbers to be almost identical. That's what I'm saying. The main thing that I'm taking issue with is the fact that you guys are pretending that Americans are uniquely stupid. I think they're about as stupid as everybody else, and they're also more free than most people. So the question is whether or not you value that liberty or that freedom, or if you don't. I do. But I also like freedom is not just the freedom to do good shit. Freedom is also the freedom to do incredibly stupid and dangerous shit. So yeah, that's
And
my
let me
main
be
point.
let me be fair to the point Counterpoints is making. I think it's a good point that he made. I don't think like okay, here's a little bit of a concession. I don't think Americans are like stupid baby brained individuals just walking around
Well, at least
aimlessly.
a
You
third
know
of
what I'm
them,
saying?
right?
Yeah, at least a third of them. That's the thing about our politics, though, is like a third votes, another third votes, and then a third is silent. So like it's just that 1/3 is a very loud 1/3, and that 1/3 has a lot of authority when it comes to our government. That's a problem in my view, and it's not just a uniquely American problem. I mean, Bolsonaro's gotten COVID like 50 times, you know. But I would say, I would say like compared to like other developed countries, at least we do.
You're
Probably have
saying
more
we
of a
have the
problem.
material wealth to not be as stupid, and we don't seem to be capitalizing on it, and that frustrates you. I
Yes.
understand
We
that part.
perhaps also have like
vaccine hesitancy in Australia was super high. Like as of
Yeah,
May,
it's high in Germany, high
in
in
May
France.
2021, it was up to like 30. What is this? 33% in May of 20.
Yeah, that's my whole argument.
No.
All of these places. Right now, what we're seeing is obviously vaccine hesitancy is declining because as it's happening in the United States, vaccine hesitancy in the United States was probably around there back then. Right, so
We're also
like
killing the
I
hesitant
don't know that
people.
we're uniquely stupid, but I don't even know why we're arguing specifically about hesitancy. I think we all know that anti-vaxxer. I don't know that Nathan has successfully got us all into a stupid straw man that no one was arguing. We all, I think literally every person in the panel is willing to admit that
amazing.
vaccine hesitancy in the United States is higher than literally every other country in the world. We've all been like arguing. We all understand that. So if we all know that, then that means that what Problematic Pan was arguing this entire time was just that vaccine hesitancy is some of the contributing factor for the problems around the world regarding COVID vaccination. I don't know why we're like down this stupid rabbit hole trying to prove something that we all knew.
Well, I think
Connor,
the
I've
reason
got
we're
you on
having
one
this
thing.
discussion, Fanatic, is because the topic was brought up in a discussion about billionaires and their impact on the COVID pandemic. I'm referencing medical experts that say like stuff like the IP waiver could have prevented that horrible second wave in India. I don't think that the issue of like vaccine hesitancy in the developing world is really that relevant when we're talking about this, because if IP waivers alone were one of the major, if not the biggest factor, I think that it's important we stick around that. I just wanted to address the point earlier about vaccine hesitancy in the developed world. That's my point there.
I mean,
Connor, I've got
Let's go.
Connor, I've got
I
one.
don't disagree.
Tiberius, come on, Tiberius, go ahead.
Yeah, Connor, I've got one thing for you. So I don't know if this is going to disprove it or not. The United States is about the numbers that you said. I've got a few other numbers, and I'm just going to throw countries at you. These are all at least claiming to be over 80% or at least over 75. Canada, the United Kingdom, France, Spain, Germany, Finland, Norway, Sweden. Yeah, literally like most of Western Europe as a whole is beating
Okay,
us
so a
by
bunch
at
of
least
Euro
10%.
cucks who don't value freedom. Got it.
Well, look, I'm not disagreeing with you on that. I'm just going with the actual numbers here. Either it is by mandate that they're getting these numbers, which some of them definitely are. Germany does have a mandate, and I can vouch for that. Or it is that if they have the choice, they are choosing more.
Yeah, no, I'm perfectly fine with this take, but then like this is the main thing that I get frustrated with this fucking conversation. It's like people want to have their cake and eat it too, where they're like, yeah, freedom is based. I love freedom of conscience. I love freedom of speech. I love this. I love that. But everybody's a fucking idiot, and they don't know how to do this, that, the other. And it would be so much better if we did this, the other. And like for me, it's like maybe I'm just being descriptive. Like maybe that's part of the problem. But for me, it's like these things come in tandem. They come together where if you have like a liberal democratic society that's largely free, that values like independent thinking and skepticism of power and all that kind of stuff, then what happens is sometimes people are skeptical of power in ways that are not appropriate. So while I'll defend the fucking right of people to be skeptical of power, I would basically say to any conservatives who haven't gotten fucking vaccinated in my fucking chat, you're a fucking tool bag. And the fucking the what is it? The pericarditis and the myocarditis that is relevant to vaccines or whatever, guess what? That's a part of the fucking disease too. So chances are those people, if they caught the fucking disease, they would actually legit shit, like fucking, they probably would have gotten it worse. And those are the same people who are having fucking heart and lung problems. Those are the same people who would have had heart and fucking lung problems from the fucking, from the disease itself. So that doesn't prove anything. And I don't know, like you can't fucking have your cake and eat it too when it comes to this kind of shit.
I'm
That's-
just saying,
that's-
educating males on the fact that they can get ED from fucking getting the COVID virus should probably be a thing in the forefront. We would probably get a lot more people getting the COVID vaccine if they realized that they could not fuck. if
we're not children anymore. That's what they use.
Oh,
to
we are.
remember-
The only thing
we
that
are,
gets my
our
dick hard
society
anymore
is
an
childish
intense
like
debate.
that. Look at the biggest hits that you guys get on your YouTube VODs and tell me it isn't over stupid shit, people screaming at each other, childish bullshit. That's where
Sure.
people are at. That's where our society is at.
You know
At least
what?
a
You
third
make
of
a
them.
good
We're
point
brinking
there.
on idiocracy right now.
At least a third of them.
With like the drinks. Remember they were talking about Yellow 5 would shrink your dick, so then that made like Surge end up failing. That failed in high school. That wasn't like that was like a major thing that was working on adults in order to like minimize their purchases. I think that's silly.
Yeah, but let's
it's
say
a-
if you
it's a
have like some
honest
low
truth. It's a
20,
truth
if you
about
have
the
some
virus.
stupid college kids, right, that all they're thinking about is like running around, and you tell them, right?
With the freedom argument,
Maybe.
it's like
They're more educated than high schoolers.
it pushes into
Well,
the
yeah,
idea
right.
that
But now we're dealing with adults who have to make adult decisions. I understand this, but I'm saying college people are still very much stupid. Like 20-year-olds, 22-year-olds are very much dumb.
Sure, that's why Steven Crowder looks intelligent, but it doesn't change the fact that like
Right.
I don't be near-
Right. So maybe this childish attitude, these childish things might be able to encourage them to go. That's all. That's the only thing. It's possible.
We gotta look for every.
I don't think it's a
opportunity
good
we can to
policy,
encourage
right? It's like,
people to do
hey,
it,
go
you
get a
know?
COVID shots or your dick won't grow. Like I think that's silly, right? But just
the
There's
like
better
the-
ways to phrase it, but yeah.
I rather try that avenue than not try anything if we can't get a certain demographic to go. Right?
Yeah, but the
I don't
biggest
get that.
demographic that's not going is black people, and the reason why black people aren't going isn't because we're afraid of
Right,
something
sure.
with our dick not growing. I promise.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
man.
ED is your dick
Has
not
anybody
getting
seen
hard,
Black
not
Dynamite?
growing. I mean,
Well, it grows when it gets
you know,
hard, doesn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
Has anybody seen Black
Yeah.
Dynamite?
it
Yeah.
plumps up, whatever.
It grows.
You remember when Richard Nixon was gonna fucking shrink all the black dudes' dicks?
What?
you guys were
I mean,
saying
it's
that
only
Nathan
fair.
derailed
Look,
us. You guys
it's
are
only
complaining
fair.
Nathan derailed us.
Oh, wait, speaking of
Listen.
derailing, wasn't the original
Listen, it's
topic
relevant.
or-
Maybe
Please,
Michael
Connor,
J.
fuck
White, a known kung fu and fucking martial artist, maybe he needs to make a movie about how fucking not getting COVID will shrink or COVID vaccine will shrink your dick.
Oh my
Maybe
god.
that's the
Sure.
answer.
Or maybe
Yeah,
to turn the
so-
frogs gay.
Yeah, so wasn't the original topic actually talking about rich people and if we should trust them or not? I don't know how we got the fucking COVID and staying on it
Because
for
we're
45
poor, stupid
Yeah,
people.
Michael
We're
J.
the
White,
1/3.
Michael J. White is rich. I don't trust that guy. Fuck him.
Yeah, fuck Michael J.
It's like I'm sitting here. I'm like, I'm prepared to talk about the morals and ethics of rich people, and all of a sudden we're in COVID and talking about why Africa
That's your
can't get.
fault. You came
Is
prepared.
Prime asleep?
I know.
Yeah, your fault. You came prepared.
Tiberius,
probably
what-
even
what
read
did
the
you wanna say?
articles
We can
too,
go
didn't
back,
you?
What a loser.
I feel like we've exhausted this end
No,
of the
like, no,
conversation.
no,
So what
like-
did you want to talk about, Tiberius?
But,
No, so yeah, like I don't know if you
There's
can
more
like.
to this convo, but go Tiberius.
Please,
Goddamn,
no.
Virgo. Yeah, so I don't know if you can read any articles to like figure out if rich people are moral or not. Other sides than like opinion pieces, like, hey, look at the good they did or look at the bad they did. That that's just going to be a hit job. But either way, so here's the reality. What just on a bare metric is that what empowers a person to be a billionaire? Number one, and then number two is that whenever they are empowered as a billionaire, does that equivocate to them having a better opinion on the general whole regarding either one subject or all subjects or some subjects? So let's break
This
that
guy
shit
talked
down.
about the topic.
I know, right? How dare I? So yeah, number one, does being a billionaire display competency?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Depends on
ordinarily,
billionaire.
being
Are you born a
is
billionaire?
likely
Yeah,
no.
I mean, in your
Are you born a
specified field
billionaire?
or your ability to run a business, sure. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Yeah, it's
Not-
like it's always gonna be a case by case basis on who they are. But being a billionaire
Yes.
alone does not display competency, right? Because you just who knows, maybe you're born into it. But if you're somebody that's been like, maybe started like a software business and somehow expanded that, and but we're in the weeds or started and was a part of that, and it's your business from the dirt all the way up, I would expect you to be significantly more competent than like literally most other people when it comes down to like whatever your industry is.
Okay,
If
sure.
you're
Something
born
about-
into it, maybe not because you'd be like a baby.
As I
But
said,
if you're
second
but if
gens,
you're-
they're morons.
if you're a billionaire, you already know you can like read and write to some level. You already can have some level of public speech to some extent. And then you're surrounded by like your family who are like the billionaires. So it's the same idea of like saying, well, if you're a student of somebody who's really smart, right? Not even a student, let's put it out of that environment. If you work with someone who's really smart, That's like saying that you wouldn't gain anything from it. You don't learn anything. It doesn't matter if you surround yourself with really smart people. The billionaire is surrounded by the person who became the billionaire or what have you. So there's always the idea that you're already surrounded by someone who might be smarter than the average person. So yeah, you'd inherently be like some level of like competent. Then it's about like how competent compared to the average person are you? And then I think that's the discussion.
Yeah, this is why the Trump family is so based.
I hate you. Shut up.
It's
I'm gonna
it's-
beat
it's-
you. I'm beat you to death. Stop.
It's true. Donald Trump Jr. is probably one of the smartest minds of his generation.
Okay, I
matter of
can't
fact,
take the
Aaron
level
Trump-
of
He's a
I-
true thought leader.
I can't
did
take
you
the
read
level
Trigger?
of
He was so
memery
good.
and maintain any kind of like
Real,
cohesive thought.
but
Let's not
real
do this.
importantly, which one of his kids is his favorite kid, and which one did he spend the most time with,
Ivanka.
Ivanka's his
Eric?
favorite.
and which one's the smartest?
Probably Ivanka.
I rest my case. Thank you.
Is
And
he
when I
Ivanka's
said
smart,
Trump
or is he just
Jr. was a
more
thought
like-
leader, I meant THOT thought, not THOT.
I don't know. Eric looks pretty smart.
You've
By
got to be
comparison?
shitting me right now.
Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
okay. Okay, so-
I would
the
actually
poor
like to
end of the gene
refocus
pool
this
there.
conversation. Oh my god.
Please.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ty then.
Yeah, so I'll bring this to question number 2 because it seems like we more have a consensus on topic 1, and that is, all right, so if we assume that they're going to be at least more competent on the margin, right, is that how many things should we actually trust them? Just the original thing that they like kind of became famous for or like monetary for? Or I want to throw you guys this argument. Can we assume that because they don't have to work in a standard living, that they can largely do whatever the fuck they want because they're billionaires? Is that can they take their time and investments to see other projects? Like Bill Gates does so much fucking bullshit, it's insane. I won't go down that road unless I have to. But yeah, should we trust them on multiple subjects and go?
Well,
You
yeah,
have
if
to
they're
realize
smart
that
about
running
trusting
the
them, right?
institution-
Like,
Okay, not everyone at one time, please.
well, you said go. You should have specified.
I'm
I was about to say,
sorry.
Yeah.
this is the Reverie, son.
They,
This is mask off. What
Yeah,
the fuck
this
are you
is-
talking about?
They have
I
to,
know,
they-
right?
they have to be able to realize that. So, like, if you're somebody who's like a business owner or something, and you're doing the same thing every day to make you a shitload of money, and you're making more and more money, you have to have that like that moment that makes you realize that you can take a break and come out of it. So they have to realize that they have that thing that you're describing, that perhaps like they've been doing it for so many years that it's just routine. The idea of like stepping back from their business or stepping back and being like someone like Bill Gates or what have you may not even appeal to them. They might not even think it's possible. They might think, well, if I step back, who's going to run this thing? Or if I step back, I can't make this money. So at first it's the assumption there, I think that is like flawed, is that they realize that they can step back and just not do anything for the rest of their life.
Well,
Another
I mean,
thing
no,
is when
that's
you
you
look
don't
at
think
they all have the
realize-
financial freedom to do that,
Yep.
and
Yeah, like-
pretty much most of them do, right? They're not gonna stay CEO of their company until they drop dead at like 90.
But it was you that acknowledged that they might do other things, like they might care about their legacy. So if
Yeah,
your legacy is
course.
your like child or something, right? They might see that. Well,
I mean, maybe,
if-
but
if
not
you-
necessarily.
if you might think like, well, I could just step back from this and like, I'm good. Perhaps these people might not think, well, my grandkids are not going to be good. Maybe I need to ensure something because this is the only way to make sure that my grandkids will be able to be as wealthy as I am. And then there's all these studies that people bring up largely like on the right wing and stuff of like, well, people who like are born into wealth will lose it within a certain amount of generations. And I'm sure that these
Three is the
billionaires
average.
hear that as well. So they want to grab as much money as possible to make sure that doesn't happen to their family.
And when you look at like people like Bill Gates, who he does a lot of stuff, right? He founded Microsoft. He's involved with public health for some reason. He has like a bunch of land all around the United States. I don't think just him being involved necessarily gives him expertise. Like, I mean, he has a bunch of land, but I'm sure he doesn't like know the ins and outs of farming the land or something like that. But
The land thing freaks me
Who
out more
knows?
than anything else, dude.
Yeah, as a little
It just all depends on the
What's his
individual,
plan?
billionaire and the process and whatever they want to participate in, right? So like they diversify and all these other things, but when it comes down to pet projects specifically, like for example, like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, everything where like this is their new passion post retirement or whatever. I feel fair. I have no idea. I made some great points. Counterpoint. I know you're celebrating.
No,
for me,
I
not
just made
whatever
like a
happens in
fucking
your Halo game.
100-yard fucking skewer shot.
Well, good job.
Thanks,
But
buddy.
I think I would be more willing to hear what they said on those passion projects, right? Because this is exactly that. This is down their new passion. I'm convinced, like, if it's their foundation has their name on it, they're talking to all these individuals and talking to all these experts, that they probably are more interested in learning of the why and the hows, as opposed to like the business that they may or may not have started, which is like in operational mode, and they're probably trying like extremely like high level, right? With lack of interest, possibly. I don't know. Maybe I threw that last part in. You can ignore that. But like, I don't know. Some of these side passion projects, like, I would believe, honestly, like today, I would be more willing to listen to Bill Gates about like, how do you say, about like vaccines and whatnot than I would even venture to say some elements of software. Not all of it, right? But like initial, I don't know.
Oh, he's probably been out of the game for decades.
Pretty-
But
Right.
the power of a billionaire is not necessarily in like in a specialization. It's in the capacity to run an institution and maintain money.
Right.
So
Maintain
so
money.
that's
Maintain
Or
money
if
is
I
the
have
biggest
money
thing,
questions,
and that means
I'll
not
ask
spending
them.
money generally, right?
If I'm gonna ask, I'm
No.
definitely not asking Trump how to raise my children just because he has kids.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
I
it's
mean,
the same.
in
It's
the
the
grand
same
scheme
thing.
of things, having kids isn't that hard. You know, you do the. I mean, raising them well is hard. Raising
There
them
you
well
go.
is hard, but
All
having
right,
them
good save.
right is. Yeah, well,
Get
I
him,
mean,
Connor.
I want it to be clear. That's what I meant.
Connor was about to
Right,
go
like,
full attack, dog.
Yeah, I mean, I get that being a parent is hard, but like
No,
having a
it's
kid,
not.
you know, you do the thing, and then 9 months later, you have a kid.
You know what? Being
Maybe for a
parent
man.
isn't hard. It's just super
Biological man.
easy. 18
Okay,
hours a day,
I
and you
didn't
get
mean to-
tired.
Okay,
Yeah,
I didn't mean to
exactly.
go into this like is being a parent hard thing because I really don't give a shit. My point was that
Yeah.
when it comes, we go to billionaires when they do something exceptional. Raising a parent, as great as it may be, you know, as fulfilling as it may be, it's easier to become a parent than it is to have an organization that sends you in orbit, right? Like if we take a look at shit like this, that is something that's hard. So like, I mean, I wouldn't trust Bezos to build me a rocket, but I would trust him to make a team to build a rocket because clearly he's able to do that, right? So the ability, the
yeah.
organizational ability is
Revolt.
We're
he
talking
really
about
bad?
I wanted
asking
to
him
say
for
this and have you
specific advice,
object.
right? We're saying the
Well-
billionaire, not his team of experts,
no, he
not
comes
the people
along
he
with
may
the
be able to
billionaire.
hire.
Yeah.
He's got to
We're
check
having a
that shit, or else he's going to
conversation with
blow up
this
in his space
billionaire.
dick in outer space.
No,
Like,
but
you got to be
it's-
careful with
When
that
we
shit.
talk about
No,
Bill
it's-
Gates,
it's-
we're
yeah,
not
when
just
you
talking
talk
about
about-
him individually. We're talking about everyone
Yeah.
he knows, his network, right? Like,
Well, in Revolt, I kind of want you to address this because I think you have like one of the more critical perspectives or whatever. Is like, I think that so obviously having $1 billion is probably fucking sweet. Like you literally wake up, you just have your like mistress like give you a blowjob in order to wake you up instead of having like a traditional alarm clock. Your wife doesn't care because you literally give her $100,000 a day to spend. Like being a billionaire is probably fucking awesome, right? But at the same time, what I think is interesting is you wake up and probably everybody that you shake hands with wants a piece of your wealth. And they have new ideas and institutions and things they want to build and projects and philanthropy and blah, 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 fucking blah, where everybody around you is trying to basically take a chip off of what you have. So my point would be that I would give, while not saying that it's good or bad, I would give some level of credence to that person having like some kind of like social intelligence or economic intelligence if they're able to perpetuate an institution for more than a few decades without going bankrupt. That's what I would say.
And yeah, I think in Prime's message about the topic broadly, he also asked, should we listen to their opinions when it comes to things like tax code and transportation policy? And I can't help but think of Elon Musk in this situation when we look at things like the Build Back Better. Elon, this is a recent article, 59 minutes ago. He's saying that the U.S. should get rid of all government subsidies. They should just can the plan. Now, look, maybe like TikTok libertarians gonna love that statement. I don't know. But like I don't. The idea that we have to get rid of like all subsidies just seems so reductive. He's also against the US investing money into things like charging stations. He got mad over like a bill that would only a tax that would only affect like not even the majority of billionaires, a tiny amount, or no, maybe all of them. I don't remember. But
Who gives a fuck?
tiny
They're
amount of
billionaires.
people. So like I think that billionaires are extremely self-interested,
Everyone's
like all of us are self-interested. Yeah, all of us are self-interested.
That's the point,
The
though. That's
only
the
No,
difference.
thank you for
Well,
telling me
that
that. I was
same
gonna make
everybody
a
is
point.
self-interested.
All of us
That's
are
Hey,
why
guess what? Everyone is
wait,
biased as fuck
that's
on
why
taxes. Amazing.
individual people shouldn't
All of
be
us-
shouldering
all
the
of us are-
responsibility to do these things. This is why
Well,
governments do these things, because
no,
everybody's self-interested, right? And like
this-
that's at least the major point of my contention. But like the idea that like Bill Gates has a passion project that is something besides like himself, right? It is just like it's ridiculous. Like
I
everything
don't
he's
know. That
involved
dude
in
still
trying to
drives a
fill-
Volvo and wears New
Why?
Balances. What
Why?
are you talking
Why?
about?
Wait,
Because, like,
why
so
is why is that
What
ridiculous? Why is that
Nathan was saying,
ridiculous
like,
for him
the
to
argument
possibly
would
have a
go
passion
for-
project?
because like he started the Melinda Gates Foundation like to cover
Mhm.
for his bad PR for the fucking antitrust suit that he
IT
got
shit.
slapped with from Microsoft. Like that was
Okay.
like right when he started up. Like the point is like he got the billions of dollars that he has or in the first place by like fucking working illegally and like and taking advantage of fucking like an illegal monopoly, right? And he was never really held to account for that. That's one point. The other thing is that like all of these billionaires that do all this philanthropical shit, like it is they're spending so little of their money that most of the time what they do is they take a chunk of money, they invest it in a trust in the name of the whatever the foundation is, and then they put themselves on board of directors and then they see how it's spent, if it's spent at all, and it's usually not spent. I think if you look at like the actual amount of money that Bill Gates spends, they make more money than they spend every year. Like they even though they're spending a lot, they're still profiting from this. Like it is not like to think that
Or they're
any of
giving
this
away
has
money
anything
to
to do
credit
with
card
donated-
companies.
So
I mean,
so
$35 billion dollars isn't
Like, what
nothing.
kind of
It's not a small
philanthropy gives
portion
away
of this.
money to credit card companies?
Wait a minute.
The
What?
point, the point earlier about
That's-
like the
Oh
point
yeah,
earlier
about
about
taxes. I
self-interest-
wanted to say this to you, Nathan. Like this,
Yeah.
that same argument could be used to say, "Oh, well, you don't make this much money, so of course you want to raise taxes above this limit, right? You were self-interested to do that because it
Well,
won't
yeah,
cost you
yeah,
anything, and you get
absolutely.
benefits in return."
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
this
The
idea
point I
that you
was saying-
can't,
no,
if you
the
have an
point I was
incentive
saying-
to argue in one
point
direction,
I
your
was
opinion
saying-
doesn't count as stupid because we all do that.
No. Their opinion absolutely counts because that's the reality of it. They get to influence a lot of fucking shit. The reality is they absolutely have influence. The point about self-interest is the question of this whole debate is should they have like some sort of say? Should they be the ones being interviewed on like CNN or MSNBC or Fox News whenever there's a big political question? No. How about these news people with all the money in the world with a huge budget? How about they go to like rural America or wherever in America, could be urban, could be suburban, wherever, go all around the country and ask regular people because we're all self-interested. It's just that most regular people's self-interest.
It's regular people don't give a
I
fuck
don't
about
think
any of this shit.
no, but I don't think
Also,
anybody's
no,
advocating.
no,
I don't think
regular
anybody.
people-
I don't
Regular
think a single
people,
soul
when
on
they're-
this panel has advocated that you should listen to Elon Musk on every opinion that he ever has. Right? It's only, and it seems
Where's
to be
Fabian Liberty?
right. It's
Even
only
he
when it's on particular topics that they may have expertise in. Right? It's like and I would even venture to say it's like even though Elon Musk has expertise in like theoretically in like batteries and vehicles and cars now, electric vehicles, because he's still in the market, like this is exactly like for his business. Obviously, you're going to take everything that he says and run it through like a massive filter, right? To make sure is how genuine is it? Is it simply because it's going to push Tesla in the right way or whatever, right? I don't think
The thing
anybody's
about-
really saying like
Like
listen
that
to
tax
everything
policy.
billionaires
Yeah.
have to say, right?
The thing about that is when we're looking at like more like complex subjects, let's just say electric cars or something, should we really be turning to like, and let's just say we're talking about Build Back Better, how they want to build, like how the government wants to subsidize the construction of charging stations all around the country. Should we really turn to Elon Musk on that issue, or should we turn to like, I don't know, some kind of, even if they're obscure, some researcher, some expert on like electric vehicles or car making or something of that field? Or are we
it
going to turn to
massively
the
depends on the
billionaire that
question.
has interest in making sure the charging stations only work for his cars?
Well, it massively depends on the question, right? Because if I'm going to ask Elon Musk, I would expect, honestly, some of the best people to know, like, hey, Elon, how feasible is it? The budget is, I'm making this number up, I don't actually know. It's like 300 million to electrify all of the United States and have everybody as access to like whatever. How feasible is that? You ask him because he's done this, right? He understands this concept probably better than other people, right? That are reaching out, right? And so that's a fine question. But when it comes down to like, I don't know, like, is this part like, do you think we should like, just not have a tax cut for you because you made 200,000 cars while, you know, Ford still hasn't reached that limit on their vehicles yet. Blah, blah. Like, obviously, like, Elon's going to be biased as hell when it comes down to that statement, right? It's massively going to depend on what you're asking them. There's going to be
Wait,
questions that in the
Like,
energy complex that you have to buck Elon's
don't you think
opinion
it's a
because
little
it's
weird to say that like there could be bias on Elon Musk for like things like tax codes, but then say that there's not going to be bias on things like building charging station for Tesla cars? Like, I don't
No,
know.
no,
Like,
no, no. Hold on. I think you misunderstood what I was saying. I was talking about how feasible is the implementation, like the process. There is no opinion on it besides like how much would the budget look like to expand this because he did it, right? It's just like he did that before, right? And you can even argue. I would even give you that maybe that's not even a good question, right? The whole point of my argument is that there could be potentially questions, right, that like exist that are fine to ask Elon or other billionaires would probably be some of the better people to know. That's all. That's it.
But
Sure.
this plays into the idea of like vetting, right? So it's like you'd want to have as many advisors as possible, not just like one person. So like you could solve for some of this by like, yeah, you should ask. I think most of you guys would agree. Yeah, you could just ask a billionaire and then ask other people as well, and then you get a consensus, which I think plays most into like I think it might have been Revolt earlier on who's saying like you want this to happen as democratically as possible. Unfortunately, sometimes we can't have that in our current system, and then the most we can get is to go to every expert and then see like what they all say and get a consensus from them versus it having it come completely democratically.
Yeah.
And I want to put out there, I don't think if somebody's like speaking on something in their expertise, even if there is a benefit in it on some level, on base level, that discounts everything they have to say about it, right? It's just kind of like uh what was said earlier. It's basically one of those things.
Wiggle, say it, say my
Wiggle.
name.
There you
You're
go. Wiggle.
goddamn right.
I was looking
He
for
was
it,
talking about me, Wiggle, not you.
but
I know, but I wanted to say my name anyway.
Say my name.
I'll say it again. Wiggle. How you like that?
I'm half
man.
chub. I'm half chub. It
I'm
might be
not even
it
wiggle,
might
and
be the
that's working
COVID.
for me. So
It might be the COVID. I haven't had an erection in quite some time, maybe since the Omicron drop.
Damn it. No, but I agree. I think billionaires in some capacity, like you want to heed to whatever their expertise is, and it doesn't hurt to listen to it. But yeah, building a consensus is important. You shouldn't take their words solely. You should understand that because they own these big businesses, they do have a vested interest in certain aspects going one way or the other. Of course, if they see an opportunity for money, or they see an opportunity that they could be financially disadvantaged by it, right? So I don't think it's unfair to say, take what they have to say, with some caution, and get further consensus, but you shouldn't discount it entirely. That's kind of where I sit with it.
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone disagrees with that, right? Like, you don't want to take anyone's word completely for granted, right? You
assume
always
you're
want to have
self-interested
multiple people.
assholes. Yeah, of
Well,
course.
not just that, but like everyone has different perspectives, right? And the only way to see it, the only way to, I guess, take these different perspectives and put them into like a coherent way of viewing the world, you have to have like dialogue and discussion. So obviously you can't just get ideas from one source. You're going to miss out on so much. So like I don't see what's unique about this. Like, I don't know why we're talking about this necessarily, because like obviously you can't just rely on billionaires. You can't just rely on anyone. I wouldn't even just rely on Wikipedia, like
Right.
I don't know.
Why are you on Twitch Politics then? What are you doing?
Where do you think I get all my information from? God.
Jacobin magazine.
Oh, that's got to get sweaty when like
Damn.
someone you're talking
Jacobin's
to
way
goes
too
like
far to the right for me.
someone you're talking to
My
like,
apologies,
goes
Jason.
like, where'd you hear that from? And then he starts sweating, and you really don't want to say PrimeCayes, the Reverie roundtable. You're just like,
Jacobin.
MSNBC. Oh, well, there's this guy, he's on YouTube. They do these things nowadays. It's like what all the kids are
he
doing.
reads Wikipedia aggressively.
Did we put Prime asleep? I haven't heard him in a while.
No, dude.
Oh no, he's
obviously
the
sleeping.
CEO.
Obviously,
He's
like
the-
anyway.
Yeah, he's sleeping behind the wheel. He's letting us do all the
Can I
labor.
ask a question?
Yeah,
Like,
go ahead.
how far does this extend down the pipeline, right? Because I know like billionaires is something, blah 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 blah. But like, at what? Obviously, you can't get too specific. But like, where do you start saying like, I'm gonna start ignoring more things that you have to say, and you're talking out of your ass more often when like depending on how much money somebody's making, or is that mostly like irrelevant, or is it like Like, did it matters where they start, right? Because like, you know, if a trust fund kid starts talking to me about like, you know, slum Detroit issues or some shit like that, I'm telling him to go kick rocks. But like, if that whatever wealth that is, and that's where he came from, right? I don't know.
I think you
You
can
know,
start
this is
kind
a-
of disregarding people's opinion when you get down to like people who are like salaried, right? Like I think the very valuable opinions, the reason that we get that from people higher up is because they have to stake, you know, their well-being on the success of the company. They're not just getting this consistent paycheck. They're, you know, all of what they say is backed up. They have skin in the game. This is obviously is not like a universal policy that like, oh, if someone's salaried, they're worthless. If someone's not salaried, they're worth a lot. But I do think that there is something to having, you know, your skin in the game when it comes to how
Salsa, I
important we should
love
take
that
your
you asked
opinion.
this question. And okay, so here's the thing for me. It's not the amount of money, it's how you got it. I don't care if it's a dime. I don't care if it's a dollar. I don't care if it's $1 billion. I want to know how you got it. And,
Right.
you know, that's really how it just boils down to. Because I'm not going to assume competency out of money. I've seen people with money, and I'm telling you, like that part where I said with the meme, the kids are idiots. I'm serious. The kids are idiots. Like the amount of money you have does not determine how fucking smart you are, unless you're like in dire poverty. But that's the exception.